This is the first time I've seen a central bank come out and say silver is now going to be accumulated as a priority and in an asset that I view as the most undervalued on the planet. For real, on every level, supply, demand, increased usage in green, digital, military, you name it. It's a big deal for silver. It's a very big deal for a market that is trading massively rehypothecated. And these countries, namely India, Russia, and China, have realized it doesn't take missiles and stealth bombers to beat the United States. What it takes is accessing the back door that no one ever did. No one ever stood for delivery my whole career. Nobody did. And now we see 8.1% of the entire silver float on the LBMA delivered in the month of August.
In a move experts say could shake up the global precious metals market permanently, Russia has announced plans to add silver to its national reserves for the first time. According to a recent report from Russian news agency Interfax, Russia will be buying more gold, silver, platinum, palladium, and gemstones to shore up its reserves and weather the Western economic sanctions and market volatility. The report states that the Russian Finance Ministry proposes to allocate 51.5 billion rubles in 2025 to buy precious metals and gemstones, according to the draft federal budget for 2025 and the planning period of 2026 to 2027. Russia's announcement and its decision to include silver in its purchases have been applauded as a historic move that could drive a surge in global demand for the gray metal, which, unlike gold, remains significantly undervalued. Central banks have accumulated large amounts of gold for their reserves in the past few years. However, silver has been largely ignored. At least there have been minimal reports of these apex banks buying large amounts of the gray metal. According to renowned bullion dealer and metals analyst Andy Schectman, certain central banks have been buying and accumulating silver en masse. They have just not been reporting these purchases, using the Western suppression of the silver market to quietly shore up their reserves without completely revealing their plans. Andy believes Russia's announcement signals a potential turning point, with silver finally assuming its true position as a store of value and an important part of the global economy. In a recent illuminating discussion with Andy Millett on the Natural Resource Stocks YouTube channel, Andy highlights the importance of this shift and what it means for the global precious metals market. Andy explains how these moves align with his little by little, then all at once warnings about the impending collapse of the fiat monetary system and the birth of a new resource-backed system led by gold and silver. As we present clips from the interview, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on post notifications for more videos like this. We appreciate the support and hope you enjoy the video.
What I have witnessed over the last couple of years, and you're right, it is scary. You know, I've been doing this for a long time. No one ever tells you about the things they got wrong. And certainly I've gotten plenty wrong. But seeing the crumbs that have been laid at my feet and everyone's feet since 2019, 2020, putting them together, going out on a limb publicly and saying it and watching it happen has, on one hand, been kind of exhilarating. Yeah, I got it right. On the other hand, it's very frightening as a father of 3 kids watching the world unfold in less than an ideal manner. As we take a look at everything unfolding, we see the central banks, as you mentioned, who have been buying gold and silver at a level really the world's never seen before. Much of this accumulation has been done on the sly. You look at, and I'll get to your question, but I want to lay the foundation. You look at Saudi Arabia, they got caught importing 160 metric tons of gold, didn't report it to the IMF, but the import-export numbers caught it coming out of Switzerland. Oh, we made a mistake, so to speak. China has been buying gold for as long as I've been doing this for 35 years. And all along, their numbers were stuck at 1,200 metric tons. Everyone said you can never believe anything they say. Then they start accumulating more over the last 18 months in a row or whatnot of positive figures in accumulation. And then they stop for a few months and everyone's saying, look, the Chinese have stopped. No, they haven't. They're buying it through a proxy bank, like the PBOC uses commercial banks to buy directly from the refiners in South Africa and Switzerland. That doesn't get reported to the IMF. If the PLC, the People's Liberation Army, buys on behalf of the country, they don't report it to the IMF. China's flying all around the world buying unrefined doré bars, concentrate in silver, paying double what the Western refiners or the Western companies will pay for it and bringing it back and refining it themselves. That doesn't get accounted or reported to the IMF. And so when we talk about the amount of, and by the way, China is the second largest producer of silver in the world. And so all of these countries, and Russia included, not only do they understand the importance of commodities in this new system we're moving into, where he or she who has the commodities makes the rules, but they're also trying to accumulate more than they're letting onto in a very big way. India has imported 850 million ounces of silver over the last couple of years. And you got dig to try and find it. They've probably imported a lot more. And so what I'm getting at is that to see a country like Russia come out and say that they are going to start to accumulate platinum, palladium, and silver, it's the first time I've ever seen a country actually mention silver in terms of their stockpile. You know, we see them accumulating it. We see China accumulating it. We see India accumulating it. None of them ever made a declaration that indeed this is what we are doing. And so when you realize that these countries have been accumulating in massive quantities, where, as I said, you know, China's buying unrefined silver directly from the miners, paying double what the West will in Latin America, so they can bring it home and refine it, and it's kind of off the exchanges, no one sees it. This is emblematic of what we should expect to see all around the world. And now you have a country come out and actually say, we're going to start accumulating silver. It's the first I've seen of it.
Little by little, then all at once, has been Andy Schectman's mantra since he has been making YouTube videos and talking on podcasts, warning people about the impending collapse of the debt-based fiat system. He and other experts have issued several dire warnings about the global debt-to-GDP level, which is arguably the leading sign of the fiat decay. Fiat currencies are backed by nothing, allowing central banks to almost literally print money out of thin air. This decay has led to constant and rapid loss of purchasing power, further worsened by wages not rising fast enough to make up for the fiat debasement. Andy believes the all-at-once moment will be when investors finally realize that the fiat monetary system is toast and the world needs to get back on the sound money system. While investors might not have realized this, Andy says central banks, particularly the People's Bank of China, made this realization decades ago and have been working tirelessly to make the shift happen. Today, we are closer to that endgame than anyone can possibly imagine. Let's get back to the video.
You look at an exchange like the LBMA, Andy, and you know, it's the most widely traded exchange on the planet. 8.1% of the entire silver float was delivered off the exchange in the month of August. So these countries are also draining our exchanges by using the suppression of the Western paper market in an effort to drain the exchanges. And this is something that I think you will start to see accelerate in a meaningful way. You will begin to see the silver market. Sorry about that. Every time I start a podcast, my dogs want to say hello. But you will begin to see things happen like central banks openly admitting that they are taking possession of metal and purchasing it, let alone the opaque manner in which they've been doing it all along. And people will wake up to this realization that, my goodness, these players have been buying for a long time, when it finally comes out that it's obvious. Because if you were trying to reposition yourself out of dollars and treasuries like we're seeing, and instead of recycling into treasuries, recycling into commodities, it would do you're doing yourself a disservice to tell the world about it. You want to accumulate as much as you can before we see this revaluation, before we see the drive to accumulate metals. And you could say the exact same thing about the West. Now, I'm not saying we're accumulating it, but why don't we ever talk about how much gold we have at Fort Knox? Why do we not audit it? Why, when Ron Paul wants to audit it, is it shut down? So I guess what I'm saying is all of these countries have vested interest in keeping quiet about the real numbers, want to let us on to, yeah, we're getting some, but this is the first time I've seen a central bank come out and say silver is now going to be accumulated as a priority and in an asset that I view as the most undervalued on the planet, for real, on every level: supply, demand, and increased usage in green, digital, military, you name it. It's a big deal for silver. It's a very big deal for a market that is trading massively massively rehypothecated, where on the LBMA, and I'll shut up and listen to what you have to say about this, but on the LBMA, they have openly admitted recently that, look, they say we have 800 million ounces of silver, of which 500 million belong to the ETFs. 300 million is the float. It's the lowest amount they've had since they've started keeping records ever. And this is a 140-year-old exchange. I don't know how far back their record keeping goes, but what I am saying is they openly admit to trading 292 million ounces of silver per day of 300 million every day, 5 days a week. But the interesting thing about that number is they also say, well, you know, that number's 10 times understated because we only report the final settlement numbers, not all the trades that it took to get there. And so you're talking trading 2.9 billion with a B ounces of silver per day, 3.5 times the annual global mine supply, which is 90+% paper sold by the bullion banks that have a vested interest in suppressing the price and have for a long time. And these countries, namely India, Russia, and China, have realized it doesn't take missiles and stealth bombers to beat the United States. What it takes is accessing the back door that no one ever did. No one ever stood for delivery my whole career. Nobody did. And now we see 8.1% of the entire silver float on the LBMA delivered in the month of August. How much longer, when they tell us it's the lowest amount they've ever had on record, how much longer can they take that? And this is why those countries who know what we're doing, they understand what we're doing, even the new BRICS grain exchange, the guy who's running it said, you know, we produce and consume more wheat than the West does, but the price is controlled on COMEX. And when this new exchange is in place, that will change. They know what we're doing on all of the world's commodities. We control it. We suppress it. We can make oil negative 40 a barrel like we did in 2020. All of this plays right into the hands of the global South, who's using that suppression and other means, and now openly talking about it, to drain the shelves of what is, I think, the most important thing in the world to do, and that is to accumulate commodities in favor of treasuries. And we're seeing that happen in a massive pace.
The increasing demand for precious metals in China and India, coupled with growing stockpiles, reflects a significant shift in global commodity markets. Western exchanges like the COMEX are facing depletion of their inventories, while the Shanghai Metals Exchange and Shanghai Futures Exchange are seeing massive growth. It's clear that the dynamics are changing. As more trading volume moves east and countries like China and Russia seek to exert control over commodity pricing, the potential for revaluation discussions becomes more likely. The current suppression of silver prices, largely driven by speculative trading and leverage in Western markets, may not be sustainable in the long term. Once these Eastern markets take the reins and move towards setting prices based on actual supply and demand, we could see a reevaluation of commodities like silver. China and India, with their increasing stockpiles, are in a strong position to benefit from this shift. Both countries have been preparing for a system that might no longer rely on the current fiat monetary system, instead transitioning toward a commodities-backed one. As for when silver manipulation could end, it's difficult to pinpoint an exact timeline, but if Eastern exchanges continue to grow in influence, it might be within the next few years. This would shift the power to dictate silver's true value from the West to the East. Overall, the trends point to a gradual decline in Western dominance over precious metals markets, with increasing emphasis on exchanges like those in Shanghai, Dubai, and Moscow. When silver's revaluation occurs, it will depend on how quickly these markets can detach themselves from Western influence and how soon global demand forces a price adjustment. What's your take on this shift? Do you think the West will be able to maintain control, or is the tide turning for good? Please share your thoughts and comments in the comments section below. Also, ensure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notifications bell for more videos like this. We appreciate the support and hope to see you in the next one.